Good morning. It is February the 20th, 2023, a Monday. Ordinarily, I would be focusing on the stock market, but it's closed today for President's Day. So I am going to turn to my craft shop, my welding shop, whatever it's evolving into. I got in my mini lathe last week, and I was quite pleased with it. For the money, it was, I think, a good value. It was a Vevor 7 by 14-inch lathe. My first attempt to use it, I put it to an extreme test. I wanted to turn down some rebar, and I don't know what the strength of that rebar was or is, but it seems to be very, very hard. The tools that came with the lathe, I don't know what they're made out of. They're not carbide, and through misuse and misunderstanding of how to use that properly, I broke one of the tools, chipped it off. It might be good still for something. I'll have to figure that out. Then I used another one with some success. But I received yesterday several items that I ordered and will need for that. The lathe did not come with a live center for the rear stock. So I ordered one of those, and it looks real good. I also ordered a drill chuck, and it looks fine, except the shaft on it is small. I don't know how I'm going to fit it onto the lathe at all. I'll figure something out, but I'm disappointed it didn't come with the same kind of shaft that came with the live center. Although I may be able to use it, I'll just have to work all that out, and I intend to video that this morning. Also, I got a deviation meter that shows me if it's in round or how much it's varying. One of the reasons for turning down rebar is to have a nice piece of finished trued metal to use in projects. And what little I did, I think I should just go out and get that out of the shop and get that piece that I turned yesterday, and I'll talk about it a little bit. If you watch the video which showed me actually doing this, it would look like it wasn't going very, very well, and that's true, it wasn't. But it's put the it was a good test of the lathe. You see, what I want to do is I want to take a rough piece of steel like this rebar and true it up and smooth it up so I can use it for metal art. The other thing about this is that it's bent. Not bad as bad as when I started. I did straighten it out a little bit. So like I said, the lathe held up to that. It wasn't my finest machinist glory at all. But considering it's the first time I ever operated a metal lathe, I guess that's okay. But I got the indicator now, which will help me. All I got to do is I'm going to go out there and hammer on this thing a little bit more. because it rises right here in the center, and I want to get it a little straighter. But then I'm going to take the thing down. If I didn't, excuse me, it's changeable weather down here in Florida. It's 50 degrees at night and 80 degrees in daytime. But at least the humidity is relatively low under those conditions. But see, I could, without even bending this and straightening it up more, I can true it just by putting it in the lathe and taking metal off. But I'll be taking a lot more metal off than I need to true it, as opposed to just straightening it up. I got to hit it right here pretty hard with my 5-pound hammer. And then I'm going to put it back in the lathe. The other thing about the lathe that I didn't have operating when I turned that, I didn't have the feed screw engaged. So now I do. So I can throw the switch and it'll actually move the tool down the piece that's got to be turned, and that'll make it a lot easier. I'll be less inclined to take the deeper cuts if I have the ability to let that thing run by itself. Doing it by hand on that's probably, let's see how far that, how big, one other purchase I got to make is a better measuring tool than this one. It's just a plastic piece here. Okay, that's so I was turning 5 inches at a time. In other words, I had 5 inches exposed to do the machining on. Well, actually more than that, because actually I had it in the chuck, or in the machine there. So actually that is a little over 6 inches. And I had plenty of room to spare. There's a lot of talk or explanation online about when you see a 7x14 mini lathe, that doesn't mean you're actually going to be able to put in a 7-inch diameter, 14-inch long a piece of metal, because you've got the pieces on both ends that take up space. And that's true. That's absolutely true. But this is probably the biggest thing I'm ever going to deal with. Remember, I went from going big to I'm going small now. You look at my earlier videos from the very beginning on welding. I don't know what was going through my mind. I guess I was going to build a battleship out there or something. And I did build a few big pieces, but given that this is a retirement community and very strict on requirements, that was never going to work out. But I enjoyed it, that phase of it. Now I'm moving it into the lanai, except for the welders. Those anything that sparks and throws off a lot of heat, I've got to keep outside. But that frees up a tremendous amount of space when I don't have to deal with 24 foot long pieces of metal, and that's the way it comes from the steel yard. Now, what does that mean? Well, I may occasionally have to order more metal from the steel yard. It's so much cheaper that way. But if I do, when it comes in, I'll cut it up into short lengths. Before I was cutting it up into 10-foot lengths, and I built a metal rack for that. But that's what takes up a lot of space out there, and I want to work that stock down to smaller pieces. In fact, what I have there, I'm going to finally cut it down to 1 or 2 foot lengths so that I can bring it all inside instead of having it outside exposed. So this morning, I'm going to hook up the GoPro and start working with some of the stuff I received. I had mentioned that the chuck spindle was not going to work, but that's not true. In fact, it looks like it's going to be more likely to work than the live center. The live center is one that has a narrow shaft on it. So I might have to do something about that. If all else fails, I'll just have to return it. I have a dead center, and it would probably work, but it won't with a piece of steel that's wavy. So I had to do that. And that's another thing that the lathe did very well. It had no backstock support on the piece at all. So now, because I was, when it was being a little bit too aggressive and hitting the ridges that are on rebar, it was causing the machine to chatter a little bit, which a big heavy machine wouldn't do. But that's okay. I mean, it held up, didn't break. And I'll, particularly now that I've got the feed screw put together and working, I think that'll be, oh yeah, that's going to be fine. I'm always confused. This camera's backwards. That seems to be a really well finished. If that doesn't run true, I'll be extremely surprised. In one of my last video, I talked about am I lucky or what? There's a lot of horror stories about the mini lathes, the Chinese lathes, and I don't doubt that some of those are true. So I feel blessed that I got one that actually works. I think it's going to handle the job I intended for it. And so we'll see. Okay, I'm going to stop this portion of the video. I'll edit it in and set up a GoPro and go outside and start putting some of this stuff to work. Okay. One thing I've determined already, that shaft on that live center is too small. I'm going to return that to Amazon. So let me measure this one to see what. Okay. It has an outside diameter or inside diameter of 14 millimeters. Since I'm going to have to reorder that live center with the proper shaft diameter, I want to check the diameter and be sure I order the correct one. 23 millimeters. I guess the best way to do it, though, is to actually measure the think. Well, that really does shorten it up. But still, I'm pleased with that. It's going to cost me about about 5 inches in the longest stock I can put on there. That still makes it useful. Well, what I'm doing here is just checking to be sure the bits and pieces fit as expected, and they do. I do lose about 4 or 5 inches on the work stock area with the drill bit, the drill chuck. And but that's to be expected, and that's okay. But I need a good true piece of metal to turn, or at least not true, but not bent. Okay, looks like it's going to do fine. Yes. So that was what, $24, I think. So of course I haven't checked it with the meter to see how true it is, but it sure looks well machined. So I can't imagine why they wouldn't have made it true. I would be surprised if they didn't. And this is the most popular variation meter on Amazon. It's about $26, I think. But it's nice. It's well finished. I think it's going to be quite durable. And this is, of course, the way I will in the future determine how straight my stock is. And because when I measured this, I was off about I don't know, 20 hundredths of a millimeter, maybe a bit more. There's quite a bit of rise and fall there. You know, it took me longer to get this thing out of the wooden box that it was secured in, and quite well, by the way, than it did to actually get it running. This one was not covered with grease. It had a little bit of oily substance on it, and what I think is steel dust from the plant, which all needed to be cleaned off, of course, but didn't take long. And then I used one of my favorite lubricants for small machines, which is petroleum jelly, and coated all the surfaces, and did quite well with that. Also, I'm very pleased with the little light that came with it, and that's rechargeable. through a USB port. And it'll shed light. It's not a real bright light, but it's very focused, so that I can put it on my stock that I'm turning. So I'm pleased with that. That came with the lathe, no extra charge. So, and for the rear stock, it has a quick release latch. It's a little bit long for the, it hits up against the backstop, but it loosens up plenty to actually make to change the place where the stock is at. Okay. Well, in the deviation meter came with a fine set of nice box stored in, and a lot of tips that used for various things. I'm not sure just what. As I said, the only disappointment was the tool set. The set of tools that came with it was something of a disappointment. I don't know whether this is high-speed steel or what. It's not carbide. And I did break the tip off of one of them when I was turning that rebar. Mostly that was because I was cutting too deep and really using the wrong tool. So that you can chalk that up to inexperience on my part. And in this video, I'm not sure we're going to see but there you can see how much of that was the chips are not gouged out by the metal, rebar. So definitely not the tool for turning rebar. The rest of these tools may work fine. This is another one that I pretty well boogered up. Although this is the one I actually was finally successful in turning making the progress that I did with the rebar. But I've got some tools. The tools that came with it, no additional charge, are probably okay, particularly with a softer material. I put them through a worst case scenario, so to speak. And then I've got some center drill bits set to drill ends of stock. And that looks like that's going to be just fine. Pleased with that. And let's look at some of the tools. First time I've looked at them. Oh, it comes with a nice little tool to change the carbide tips. What I'm looking at here now is just the tool that goes in the tool holder, the shaft. All right. And here is the place where the carbide tip goes. I've got a whole set of carbide tips. No, I'm mistaken. I told you before, I held up one of those other tools and told you that was the one I
had the most success with on the rebar. Actually, that's not true. The one that I had the most success with is still the tool holder. That's this one here. And it came through unblemished. And I think that's for two reasons. Number one, by the time I used this, I had straightened up the rebar a little bit. And also I was less aggressive in how deep I was cutting. It's hard steel, that rebar. And I just keep, on this size lathe, I just have to take it off a little bit at a time. Okay, I'll put this back in the set. Gotta keep things, everything in its place, which I'm not really good at. I tend to be whatever. I use a filing system. Whatever I use last is on top. Okay. And they look pretty close to being the same. Actually, two sizes. Well, I guess they're all the same. All right. Well, that takes the guesswork out of it.
There is a shoulder for the screw that goes through that, so it does make a difference as to which side goes down. I found that out the hard way.
A little nice little tool came in handy. That is a tiny, tiny, tiny screw.
It's important that it came with a screwdriver because that Allen wrench is so fine. I don't think I would have one like that in my tool set. And it's so tiny. Everything is so tiny. It's hard for this klutz to do anything with it.
Klutz, so something this small is a real challenge. Okay. And there it is. So then I put the screw in. I think I'll balance it better, but I have the okay, you gotta be careful which side you put it on. One side of the thing is shouldered to hold the thing in.
To clarify, the shoulder is in the insert itself, not in the tool holder.
Tiny, tiny. I am not good with pieces, working with pieces this small. Okay. I hope I don't have to change these out too often for a number of reasons, the cost and the fact that it's so tiny. Oh yeah.
This is a very, very small tool, and I'm having to run the screws all the way down on the tool holder to grasp it. It barely does, but it does. But I may just take a piece of flat bar and create a shim for these small tools. In the future, I'll order thicker tools, tool holders.
That's about as thin a tool I can put in there. It's taking it almost all the way down to the bottom. Oh yeah, that's going to work fine. So I'm pleased with that. I wonder if each one of these comes with a tool in it. Let me see. Yeah, sure enough. How about that?
Each tool comes with its own Allen wrench to put on the tips.
Again, I'm pleased. I'm lucky, I guess. As you can see, I got the feed working. Of course, while that'll take the labor out of doing it by hand, that will be much more consistent. Still, I have to be there to click it off before it hits the what do you call that? The stock holder, the jaw, I guess. I guess that is a jaw. This is the tail stock, tail piece. And this is the guts of it right here. All right. Well, I think I've covered everything. There's a little more DW40 on some of the stuff I'll be handling. So I'll keep it from taking my fingerprints and resting. Okay. All right. So I'm actually ready for to give it another try. I don't know if you'll be able to see this on the camera, but you see how much how not straight it is. That I could finally true that up by taking enough metal off of it, but why do that? Why take the metal off? Unless you needed that particular diameter. So I'm going to straighten it some more with my 5-pound hammer, and then have another go of it with this carbide bit. carbide tool, and see how it does. And I'll report on that. I'm gonna cut my camera off now. Another session when I
Please subscribe, and if you like this video, click on like. And the second run of that rebar turning will be the next video up in this series.
Alexa, shop off. I don't know which is going to be clearer with that light on or not. Certainly in the way.